From 1878 to 1968, there were 71 lake captains that called Bayview, Wisconsin, on the shore of Lake Michigan, their home. While they lived here, they captained 195 different ships, from tugboats to schooners to steamships, in voyages that took them to every one of the Great Lakes. Join us now for another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we explore not only these captains, but also their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes.
Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains. Today, coming to you in front of the former home of Charles Braeger. He was a fisherman. The family had a tremendous tradition in Bayview, and before that, Jones Island, of fishing Lake Michigan. His cousin William, older than he was, lived just down the hill on Delaware behind this house, a little bit that way. And they were quite a team over the years. Both Charles and Frank were third generation Braeger fishermen. Charles, who lived in this house, who's the subject of this episode, his father Frank was extremely well known in fishing circles exclusively on Jones Island. So Charles grew up in that atmosphere, always from age 16 as a fisherman, working for his dad down there, over there at Jones Island. Then his dad died Then the family, like everyone else on Jones Island, got evicted right around 1913 or so. William moved to his house on Delaware, just behind this one, and then Charles took a little bit longer, moved into this one in 1920 from Jones Island. But they continued fishing. Together they owned 5 different fishing boats. By the way, fishermen are recognized by the International Shipmasters Association as lake captains. Just to be technical. And these were some great ones. The Braegers were tremendous. Charles did that fishing out on Lake Michigan. They went out year-round. The fishing area, I forget the correct name for it, that they went to when they performed their fishing was 20 miles out into Lake Michigan, which surprised me. I thought it was, well, they sail a little bit off the coast, and no. And what's amazing is they went out year-round. So can you imagine going out in a little fishing boat 20 miles out into Lake Michigan and then working those lines by hand, the boat going like this? These were real men, let me tell you. Not even the bigger ships went out in the winter until much later, when they were strong enough to take, their hulls were strong enough to take the ice. And even then, even today, you still have to have icebreakers. But there were parts of Lake Michigan apparently that weren't always frozen over, and so that's where they would go 20 miles out to go fishing. But they did something the big ships didn't do. So who's the bravest of them all? I don't know, that's a tough question, because those guys are brave too, the bigger ships. So it's all relative, isn't it? Anyway, Charles lived here while he captained and owned, working together with his cousin Frank down the hill from about after they moved in here basically in about 1920, and then and then managed the fishing business up on the KK River by First Street, just north of Bayview. They would sail out into the lake, catch the fish, bring it back in up the KK River, pull into the dock where their fishing store was, and the fish would go right there to be sold. So some serious fresh fish going on there, let me tell you. So anyway, Charles Braeger, 3rd generation Braeger family, roots are at Jones Island. Amazing. He, his family, his cousin William, all of them. One of the fishing tradition greats for Bayview and Jones Island. Okay, that's all. I'll turn you over to Simon Stanhope now, who will fill you in on the details, and there are a lot of details, so be sure to hang on for Simon's narration from England. And there's some slides to go with it, as always. I think you'll like those. So, with that, I will say hats off to our Bayview Lake captains, and I will see you in the next upcoming episode. Bye.
Welcome to another installment of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, where we discuss the lives of the 71 different lake captains that once lived in Bayview, Wisconsin, during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, in the age of sail and steam. This discussion will include their ships, their homes, their families, and their lifetime of sailing adventures on the Great Lakes. Here is the map of lake captains' homes in Bayview, to show you where this episode takes place. Its location focuses primarily on the large green arrow. Today we will be discussing the life of Captain Charles A. Braeger, who was born in Wisconsin and was a 3rd-generation fisherman of the Braeger family of Jones Island, and one of only 2 from the family confirmed to have been a Bayview lake captain. After his father, Frank, head of the Braeger family fishing tradition and business, retired, Charles and his cousin William took over the operation. This included a large fish store just north of Bayview on the Kinnickinnic River. It was supported by several fishing boats, which both men took turns captaining while they lived in Bayview, making them Bayview Lake Captains. Charles's fishing career on Lake Michigan would ultimately span 4 decades. Captain Charles A. Braeger was born in 1891, likely on Jones Island. His father Frank was probably the most legendary of the Braeger family of fishermen, and Charles grew up in that tradition. Charles is the 3rd generation of Braeger fishermen, and is one of 2 that became a Bayview Lake captain, the other being his older cousin William, who will be discussed in a future episode on this channel. Charles is first recorded in 1907 at age 16, working as a labourer, undoubtedly a fisherman, on Jones Island. In 1913, he moved briefly to 109 South Bay Street in Bayview, though he wasn't a captain yet. That year, 1913, was the same year that all Jones Islanders began to be evicted to the mainland. Even though the evictions were ongoing, Charles nevertheless returned to Jones Island for at least a couple more years, through 1915, possibly longer, though that isn't known. He worked as a fisherman throughout, helping his father's business, Frank Braeger and Son, that was transitioning its operations from the island to First Street. Then, in 1920, he moved permanently to the mainland with wife Elsie. During these early years, Charles is recorded as being co-owner, along with his father Frank and his uncle Fred Braeger, of 5 different fishing boats: the Smith brothers, the Olay, a.k.a. Paul Jones, the L.A. Schultz, the George W. West, and the Anna. It's unlikely, at this early stage, that Charles was a captain yet, and in fact he is only recorded as a fisherman, so his father and uncle were probably the captains. In 1922, Charles Braeger moved into 3049A South Wentworth Avenue in Bayview. This would remain his home for the next 25 years. After his mother, Amanda, died in 1932, Charles's father, the legendary but now retired Captain Frank Braeger, aged 74, moved in with Charles and wife Elsie at their new South Wentworth Avenue address. About this same time, Charles took ownership of Frank's fishing boat, the Frank Braeger. Charles is recorded as becoming its owner in 1931, which necessarily equated also with being its captain. There is much overlap between Charles and his cousin, fellow Bayview Lake captain William Braeger, regarding the ownership and operation of the Braeger family fish business. For example, over the years, the family operated several fishing boats. Though Charles can only be firmly connected with one, the Frank Braeger, which he took over owning and likely captaining when his dad retired in about 1931, Charles likely was also involved with others, and possibly even as captain, but that is not known. The same goes for his father Frank's fishing business at 2013 First Street. Initially called Frank Braeger and Son, William actually managed it from 1924 to at least 1929, and then renamed it William Braeger and Co. Charles was connected to all of this, but due to the boats and the business being family-operated, it's all intermixed, and it's likely Charles and William switched off back and forth over the years between running the store and captaining the fishing boats. For example, while Charles was the owner of the Frank Braeger, his cousin William was also its captain at one point. Likewise, while William took over the fishing company, Charles is also reported as its owner. In fact, later in 1942, Charles reported the name of the company had changed yet again, this time to the Charles Braeger Fish Company. So, the best description is they just helped each other out, and their roles overlapped, putting the business and the family first. Still, it is William, not Charles, that is the most extensively documented as both fishing boat owner and fish store owner, both after his uncle and Charles's father, Frank, retired, and also leading up to Frank's retirement. This Braeger family wholesale fish store, just north of Bayview on the Kinnickinnic River, had a simple and easy way to get the daily fish catch to market. Their family fish tugs would merely sail back in from Lake Michigan and tie up to the Kinnickinnic River dock at the base of this store. The fish could then be easily transferred from the fishing boat to the store's bins and made available for buyers. Perhaps most significant, both Charles and his cousin William accomplished these things, over 40 years each as fishermen and lake captains, plus managing the wholesale family fish market, with just a 7th and 6th grade educations, respectively. Then again, this was not only not unusual, but it was also the norm for the time. In fact, all of Bayview's 71 lake captains averaged just over a 7th grade education. They succeeded because they just plain worked, and they worked hard. Charles Braeger and wife Elsie were married for 30 years. In the research, no children were discovered for them, though they appear to have raised a niece, Edna. In 1947, Captain Charles A. Braeger died, age 58. During his career, he was very active within Wisconsin and Great Lakes fishermen's groups, promoting and looking out for their and his interests. In his younger days, he had been active socially in the Jones Island community, helping to form at least one social organization there. 11 years later, in 1958, his wife Elsie Braeger died, age 63. They are buried together at Arlington Park Cemetery in Milwaukee. Thanks for watching. This photograph isn't about Bayview or its lake captains, but it's from the same era of Great Lakes maritime history. We thought we'd close with it for enjoyment, as it captures the spirit of the era. If you'd like to read more details about Captain Charles A. Braeger, as well as the sources for the information contained in today's video, you can find these and more in the book Bayview, Town of Lake Captains, for sale now by individual volumes on both Amazon.com and HenschelHouseBooks.com. All proceeds from book sales go to support various maritime history projects related to Bayview's lake captains. One of these is a plaque and marker with the captains' names and addresses on it as part of the creation of the Bayview Lake Captains Historic District, which will be the first of its kind in America. If you would like to contribute to support these projects, to include this and other markers honouring Bayview's lake captains, with 100% of all donations and contributions in all forms going to support them, please consider contributing to us through the listings found on our website under the Contribute button. Note, we are not a 501c3, so contributions are not tax-deductible. If, for some reason, we are unable to secure these markers, then all funds donated to this site will be given as a cash donation to the museum ship SS City of Milwaukee in Manistee, Michigan. This is the only surviving intact ship that was once captained by a Bayview lake captain, and in its case was captained by at least 2, and likely 3, totaling over 20 years between them. Finally, we also have free self-guided walking tours of Bayview's 71 lake captains' homes, using only your phone. It's simple and easy. Just go to our website, shown here, find the item on the menu bar at the upper left named Free Self-Guided Walking Tours, and then scroll down to find the map with instructions. Zoom in by street. When you find a captain's house you're interested in, click on it, and details appear on the right, along with a link to the YouTube episode from this channel that provides the biography of the captain that lived there. It's free, fun, and available any time you're out walking. Just bring along your phone. I'm Simon Stanhope, narrator for these episodes. Join us again soon for the next chapter of Bayview, Town of Lake Captains.